edition of the AP Latin live stream. We always know on Fridays we've got our really hardcore viewers, right, Ben?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm here, right? I'm a hardcore viewer.
Right, exactly,
Latin
exactly.
to the extreme, Friday at 6 p.m., 5
Yeah.
p.m. Central.
We're excited to have you guys with us today. I think we talked about this, Ben. I think we talked about that we were going to dedicate this to our seniors
Yes,
who
I think so.
were so sad to see graduating, but excited for them. And I know you guys found out a while ago in Maine and Texas today, we found out that we definitely won't be back in school until through the end of the year. So
Right.
anyway, we know that this is a different spring than the seniors were expecting. So we're thinking of you guys, and we'll talk more about that later because actually we have a great speech for them today. But we'll start with a different kind of speech.
I think
Heus, Ben. Defessi, Aeneadae, nos contendimus.
Wait, this is in English. Wait, when did we become the weary followers of Aeneas, the Aeneadae?
Ben. Esne tu defessus.
Certe. Es dies Veneris. Venus est parens Aeneae. F. Y. I.
Anglicae.
Anglicae, yeah.
Melius est. Nonne legimus de laboribus Aeneae, nonne sequimur Aenean in hoc carmine.
Yeah, we have read about his labors, right? And yeah, we do follow him in this poem. Yeah, sure. Now that Virgil has finally named him, really, I mean, we are kind of following Aeneas.
Ergo sumus Aeneadae. Sic defessi Aeneadae. Hodie contendimus petere cursu litora quae proxima.
So we want to the for those following along, right? The De Festi Aeneadae, because I think this is important with respect to like the Latin for the Aeneid. So
Absolutely.
we're hurrying, right, to petere, to seek the shores, right?
Yeah, well, cursu by means of our course, on our course, we're seeking the shores quae proxima that are closest because we're tired. Defessi sumus.
With our nauibus, right?
Yes,
Or
yes.
the other word.
Yeah, exactly.
et Libiae vertimur ad oras, and yeah, we are turned
Oh, we're turning ad
ad
oras.
oras Libiae, to the shores. We talked about that, ora, right, being one of the anagrams of Roma,
Right,
or
exactly. It's a
Armo, and Maro, all that fun stuff.
amor, yeah, exactly, all sorts of things. So yeah, and a really important word for the Aeneid. And so next we have a picture of the ora libui. This is an artist rendering of what ancient Carthage must have looked like, might have looked like.
How do you know it's ancient Carthage? Like, what are some of the defining features?
Well, I recognize it from that harbor that we're going to be talking about a lot today, and probably when Aeneas visited in person, of course. It probably didn't look exactly like this since the city was just starting, but
they're digging it up,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. So it gives us an idea of what it was going to become.
And also at the top, right, there's that citadel.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So.
All right. So as we mentioned, we're here for the AP Latin live stream this Friday afternoon. I'm Jenny Luongo. I teach at St. Andrew's Episcopal School in Austin, Texas. And as always, you can tweet at us at Parwa Luongo for me. And Ben, you want to tell them your stuff?
Yeah, I'm Ben Johnson. I teach at Hamden Academy in Hamden, Maine, where it did snow a little bit this morning. I am at Latin Tutorial on Twitter. And yeah, we've been enjoying engaging with you guys on Twitter a little bit this week. So if you have anything to add, or if you want to tweet at us because you won the Kahoot yesterday, I mean, that's great. I love all that sort of stuff. So so that's that. In Parwa Luongo also. So if you want to follow us, or if you have any questions also, like if you have a question afterwards, like you can ask us and we will do our best to give you the best answer that we can. So we had some, what do we call it, Jenny?
It was a learning opportunity for
Learning
them.
opportunity, right?
Yes.
Also known as homework. This is a passage that you guys would consider to be sight. It's Virgil describes the fate of Maecenas. This happens in book 6 of the Aeneid. And we think that even though there isn't multiple choice on the AP test this year, that having a passage like this and working through it, even if it's with multiple choice questions, will help prepare you for that sight passage that they're going to have from the works of Virgil. And so the good thing with multiple choice questions is that it kind of limits how you think about the answers, and you can kind of use the questions and answers to help guide you through something that you've never seen before. So hopefully you did that last night or this morning or this afternoon. So here we go. Let's get to the answers first. So number 1, another Trojan whose death is associated with the landing in Italy is Palinurus. That's someone who he ends up getting thrown off the ship at the end of book 5. And Aeneas sees him in the underworld, and Palinurus really wants to be buried. But he isn't. And just like Maecenas, Palinurus has a cape named after him, or a bay. And so a lot of geographic features in Italy are named after these people in the Aeneid, or I mean, maybe it's vice versa. Maybe these people, yeah. Virgil, he predicts the future so well.
I know it worked. It really works out for him.
Yeah, it
It's
does.
well
Okay,
done.
so from quo to cantu in lines 3 through 4, we learned that Maecenas was renowned for. So if you look at that, you find that he's renowned for rousing men to battle. He's a trumpeter, and it's his trumpet that allows these men to become I guess engaged in warfare. In line 3, quo refers to, and that is Misenum, than whom there is no one more outstanding. And so this is an ablative of comparison after that praestantior, and very similar to something that we've seen in book, what is it, book
I
6?
think it might have I mean, it might have been book 6 too. I remember it in book 4 when we were talking about rumor.
Yeah, okay,
And
yes, that's what I'm thinking of, yeah.
yeah, it was
All of
no
these
other
live streams have
evil.
just, they've all they've all blurred together.
Yeah, exactly. So no other evil is greater.
Wallachius, yeah, more
Yeah.
swift.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's swifter. Yeah,
yeah.
Wallachius. Between the two of us, we're gonna remember the line.
In line 7, Ilum refers to. So you look at line 7 and you're like, oh yeah, so Achilles, the victor, deprived him of his life, and that is going to be Hector, who Maecenas was one of the followers of.
And they definitely should know Hector because book 2, which is still on the syllabus, they're responsible for it in part in Latin and definitely in English. And there's that dream, right, where Hector comes to visit Aeneas.
Yeah, is he a true dream or a false dream?
You know what?
Which
We
gate
don't
did he
really
leave?
know. We don't
You know,
really know.
yeah, I know. It's true.
All right. So number 5, lines 8 through 9, Dardanio through Secutus. Tell us that. So our options are that Dardanus was a very brave hero, that Maecenas pursued inferior goals, that Aeneas added Dardanus to his allies, or that Maecenas was an ally of Aeneas. And so we learn in those lines that this fortissimus heros, this bravest hero, had added Sese himself, Socium, as an ally to Dardanii, to Aeneas. So D, Maecenas was an ally for Aeneas.
And that Dardanio is a great reminder that that is another word for Trojan, right?
Exactly. And Dardanidae are the followers of Aeneas, or the Trojans. Yeah. All right. So the metrical pattern for the first 4 feet of line 5 are B, dactyl, spondy, dactyl, dactyl. Number 7, the specific action of Maecenas, which led to his death, is described by B, Wokat. He calls Dios to the gods in Kertamina, in contests, or he calls them into contests, which it's a bad idea, kids. You can learn a lot
Cantu,
of
right? Cantu with his
song, right? And you can learn a lot of life lessons from these epic poems. This is one: do not call the gods to have a contest.
Although,
Right?
I mean, I can't think of a single time where the god was actually better than the mortal. The mortal's usually the winner here, only
Right.
they lose in the end.
Yeah, exactly. They
Right.
lose in the end. There's just yeah, it's a bad idea. All right. So the subject of venere, looking back in line 2, venere, which is a shortened form for venerunt, I believe. So we're looking
Hmm.
for something plural and nominative, and the answer is D, illy, which is kind of understood
It's got to be
at
Aeneas
that
and
point.
Achates coming back
Yeah,
from the visiting the Sibyl.
right, exactly. They're always together, BFFs.
Okay, so in number 9, the word chiere in line 4 is a present active infinitive. So if we look at that, um, uh, there's an ellipse. There was no one more outstanding at rousing men with his bronze bronze trumpet. And so this is an infinitive in that phrase, with praestantior being kind of a comparative adjective and an understood est. The words forte to conca in line 10 are translated, while by chance he makes the sea echo with a hollow conch, which is a great word. You know, a conch is a shell, and that is what Maecenas was using to challenge Triton here, in this contest and so forth, that he was so great with, and he ends up doing a great job with it. Too great of a job, in fact. The words indigna morte parentum in line 2 are translated as destroyed by an undeserved death. Parentum is destroyed, and this indigna morte, it would be good if you were to scan that line, and you could find out that indigna has a long A, so it's going to be ablative modifying morte.
All right, and finally, your last 2 questions that you worked on. We already looked at this section with vita, victor, spoilawit
Yeah, I
in line
translated that.
7.
Yeah,
Yeah, those words are see, the victor robbed him of life.
this would
And
be a
then,
good place to scan too, with that
oh,
weta, right?
yeah,
You can see
definitely.
that it's ablative.
A's
Yeah.
are always helpful to scan, right?
Hmm.
And then the last question, what figure of speech occurs in Martem, line 4? Hopefully you saw our live stream yesterday where we did lots and lots and lots with figures of speech, because that had been a popular request. And we talked about the fact that when you have a God's name standing in for something else, so Martem here, he was like inflaming people with his song for Martem, for war, not for the god Mars exactly. That's always going to be metonymy. All
Okay.
right. So hundreds for everybody, right?
I'm sure they did. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
an
yeah,
easy
yeah.
one.
Yeah.
So we're going to finish off the first 209 lines, which is our intro to the Aeneid, continuous intro. And we're calling this "Perhaps One Day It Will Be Pleasing to Remember These Live Streams," right? I think so,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
especially on May 12th. So we're going to do 157 to 209, and we're going to focus a little bit more today on translation. And a couple of times there are things that aren't necessarily literally translatable, or have maybe more figurative meanings in English. So we'll cover some of those. Again, this is review, so we're going to assume that you've already read through this and have a basic understanding. So we will go quick. This is over 50 lines worth. So, I mean, we're going to have to do our best. And we already did the exam practice, and, you know, we're going to learn how to deal with difficult times. I mean, it's
Yeah.
always
I mean,
important.
we kind of are living in challenging times, so hopefully
True.
Aeneas's words are gonna echo with some of you today. So as always, you can find resources from us in that resource folder, bit.ly/APLatin YouTube. You'll want to go ahead and get your stuff out right now if you haven't already, a way to record your thoughts, your commentary, maybe your notes from class, perhaps even a printout of the text to make markings on as we go through this.
Okay. So, I think we had talked about how the weary followers of Aeneas, right, are
Yes.
turned to the shores of Italy, and so there's this place, right, and we're gonna cover this with well, I think well, personally, this is a really, for me, interesting thing called an ekphrasis, which is a vivid, could be a vivid depiction of art, could also be a really vivid description of a place of in geography and stuff. So we're going to explore this ekphrasis with a picture, because why not, right? When you have something like that, you should always draw a picture. So
Yeah.
let's follow along with me. I did some drawings today, but not not freehand necessarily. Some of these things are freehand, not like before. That
I
was
mean, Ben, if nothing else, they've learned this week what an artist you are. So
yeah.
they should always be impressed.
Yeah. Okay. So first off, we're going to look at this. We're going to be in a sekesu longo, right? In this long recess, and that's what we have here. It's kind of like an inlet, right? And then there is an insula in this island. It is thicket. It makes a port by the obiectu laterum by the projections of its sides. And this is for people not overly familiar with um, the ocean and so forth. Like this is a breakwater, and this is where all of the waves break, and so the water behind that island is nice and quiet. So it's a great place to keep your ships. So we also have Wastai Rupes. These are huge mountains. And Gemini Scopuli, we got twin rocks here, okay, and they project up into the sky. So this is looking down. This is my best depiction of like 3D. What do you call it when you have a little map that has the little lines and
Yeah, with
everything on it?
what is it?
Is it
Topographical lines? Is that what they're
topographical
called?
lines? Yeah. So those circles there are representing like these twin mountains that just project up Minantor in Kylum into the sky. And so you can see how tall they are, right? We also have a scene, a skyna, Silvis Koruskis with bristling woods, and an Atrum Nemos, a dark grove, a black grove. And it's very threatening, and that's going to be down here. And then underneath, we finally have this Antrum, and Antrum is a cave, so that's why it's a big circle there, right? Because it's kind of like cutting into the ground, right? I mean, I can't draw 3D stuff. And then we've got Scopulus pendentibus. It's with hanging rock. These are stalactites, right? Tights for the top, stalactites, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good. It's going back to like
They
third grade
hang
for me.
tight.
They hang tight.
Exactly. The ones on
And
the ground might reach the top, but they are not. They're not tight. Yeah,
okay.
stalactites.
Okay, so we got some hanging rocks here, and I'm sure that they always come to a point, don't they? So
Oh yeah.
and then we got Sedelia. We got seats, right, made out of living rocks. These would probably be stalagmites down at the bottom here. And in between, we've got aquae dulces. We've got water, sweet water. And this is a little stream that kind of drizzles out of that mouth right there. So a great, fantastic place. I mean, I'd really want to go to this place if I were overwhelmed by a storm and so forth. And we learn at the end of this that that it's so awesome there that ships don't even need to be anchored. They just stay still. It's the home of the nymphs.
Pretty cool place.
I, I like to I drawn that picture for a long time. I mean it's a little threatening. I don't know. Kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of someone I know.
All right. Well, I know they were excited that they didn't have any Roganda on that last slide, but here they come, kids. As Ben said earlier, I think we are going to be focusing on working on short targeted translations today. So we're throwing them at you from the get-go, right? So we're going to look at this section that Aeneas comes hook. So to here, subit, Aeneas subit. So number one, looking at this section, what is the case, use, and best translation for septem collectis navibus? In that first line. Then going down to the second line, what is the case, use, and best translation for teluris? Third line, what's the case, use, and best translation for optata harena? And then we want you to look at line 177. There's kind of a section in there where Katie's is busy making a fire that we'll talk about in just a minute, but we skip down to 177 and we want you to find, kind of reviewing from yesterday, 3 figures of speech, 3 literary devices in that one line. Virgil's doing good work here. And then last but not least, we want you to find the 2 words in those last 3 lines that describe the Trojans. Okay, so we'll give you a few minutes to work. You may notice that we don't have anything in orange for you today. I know. We may or may not go back to that next week.
Me miserum, right?
But you're not going to obviously have those orange highlights on the AP exam, and so we want you to practice, even though we have limited time, really kind of being able to look for these answers yourself without our extra special highlighting.
So that idea of there could be like multiple figures of speech in a line, like if that's a question, so say line 177 is a question on an AP exam, and there are like multiple answers, all of those answers are right, right?
Exactly, exactly. So if these kids can find three, they're going to be in great shape because typically you would just have to find one and identify what it is. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
we're giving them extra training,
Okay.
extra weightlifting today.
Are we ready, you think?
Paratasum. All right, here we go. So starting with that first question, we talked about how Aeneas goes to hear Hook, septem collectis navibus, with 7 ships gathered, with 7 ships collected. That's one of those ablative absolutes that we saw all over Caesar. Virgil's going to use them too. They're so handy and so brief, able to communicate a lot. So he goes with those 7 ships collected, omni ex numero, from the whole number. And if you guys remember from Ben's drawing, he had 20 ships.
Right.
Yeah,
You just
yeah.
couldn't see the other 15.
You couldn't see many
But
of
they were
them.
there. They were
They
hidden by the other ships. I mean, it's
exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
I drew
Um,
them in first originally.
so he's at this point lost 13 of them. And we were looking for Telurus. So Ak, Magno Telurus Amorai, with a great love for the land. This is a genitive. You can translate of the land, that's fine, but it's an objective genitive. A lot of times when you have a noun that denotes an action like love or fear, you're going to expect it an objective genitive perhaps. All right, so with this great love for the earth, the Troyes, the Trojans, potiuntur, they gain possession, optata harena, of the desired sand, of the hoped for sand. And this is one of those puffy verbs that expects an ablative, potiuntur. Potior is the first one in the puffy mnemonic. And so that's why optata harena is ablative there. So as I mentioned, Achates is starting a fire. So he strikes a spark scintillum from flint silice, and he caught the ignem, the fire, with leaves, and he gives arida nutrimenta, dry fuel, around it. He surrounded it with dry fuel, and he caught the flame, flammam in fomite, on the tinder. And so now, of course, once you've got a fire, it's time to cook, right? And that's what's going to start happening in 177, where we asked you to look for 3 literary devices. So tum cerem corruptundis cerealia quarma expediunt. So they bring out cerem, the grain, corruptam, spoiled by the waves, and the weapons of Ceres, which of course are like utensils, right? So like
The
they've
things you
got a
use to attack, right?
they've
Attack
got a
your series.
spatula or whatever. um, so cerem is metonymy because it stands for the grain here. You've obviously got the alliteration of cerem corruptam cerealia, and then you'll see that cerem and arma are nouns on the outside of this with their 2 adjectives in the middle, corruptam and cerealia. So that's a chiasmus. And so the people who are bringing this stuff out, they are like Ben and I on a Friday afternoon, fessy. They are, and these Trojans are actually fessy Rayrum. They're tired of things. I think Ben and I may just be tired. Sumus fessy. But that's what describes the Trojans as they get to cooking over this fire that Achates has built.
Yep. Just maybe just to let you know this idea of puffy words, over on my YouTube channel, Latin tutorial, this week actually, just by sheer coincidence, there's a 3-minute tutorial about puff v deponents and why they take the ablative case. So check that out if you'd like a little bit more detailed
Yeah,
explanation.
how exciting and handy for that. There was a teacher who was thanking us for the live stream and said that she hadn't heard that mnemonic before. So it's fun
Oh
to get
yeah,
to share with other teachers too. Yeah.
Right. I mean, we're filled with all of these, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so so we're ready to cook, right? And one of the things that the Trojans do is they get all their stuff, and yet their grain isn't that great. And so Aeneas is also a good leader, and he's got to maybe search for those other 13 or 12 ships. I think he sees one of them go down, so maybe he thinks that there's only 12 left. And so he goes and he climbs a rock, and he's going to look to see if he can find his men and maybe something else. And so here are your Roganda. What is the case and use of Pelago in line 181? What's the best translation of quem? Also in 181, and that's something we should look at the word that's next to it, maybe. What literary
Oh,
devices?
good
Oh,
call.
yeah, I know. Yeah,
Good call.
just, I mean, sorry, that's, but we would have oranged that if we're oranging things today. What literary device is found in line 183 and also in 184? See if you can find that. What's the best translation for tres errantes in 184 to 185? The whole phrase from tres to errantes. The best translation for a tergo in 186. That's a bit of an idiom. And then what noun does longum in 186 modify? There are no words in 186 that end in a um, so gender is going to be important there. Just to let you know, number one's really tough. So
Well, and Ben, I know the kids are aware that this is going to be an open book, open note exam.
mhm.
Um, but it's timed and it's a short amount of time. So it's going to be important that they know things as much as possible, like gender, so that they
Right.
can answer things rapidly as they get questions.
Right. It's like we had talked earlier about the Gauls when they love to not put things down in writing because they think that putting things down in writing and teaching people how to read reduces memory and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there is something to be said for not having to rely on an external source for all of your knowledge because that takes time. And
Right.
who has time these days?
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, I mean, maybe we do now, but
Maybe we do, but maybe
not
not on
on
the
not
exam.
on a timed exam, right? So,
Exactly.
okay, so number one, you might think that Pelago is ablative, but it's actually this poetic dative that Virgil likes to use. And this isn't the first time that he's used it, even in these first 180 lines. I think he uses it in line 126 or 124 or
And
something.
early on, inferetque Deus latio, genusunde Latinum.
Oh yeah,
Albani.
true.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is yeah, that one's yeah, that's yeah. Okay, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, it's right there.
The dative of place to which, okay, which is a poetic dative, and Virgil likes to use it, so you won't necessarily see it in Caesar. What's the best translation for quem in 181? And that's any, modifying antea, which is a Greek accusative. Greek accusatives are always fun. Literary device in 183. So okay, so Aeneas, he climbs a rock, conscendet scopulum, hoping to catch the whole view over the sea. And if he could, that's the si videat, it's a present subjunctive. So if he could see any sign of Antheus, whose was jactatum vento, tossed by the wind, and the Phrygian biremes. Uh, and then we get to 183, aut capin at Celsis in pupibus arma kayaki. And so we've got what, 3 possible ones here. We've got the alliteration of the C's. Maybe he could see any sign of Capys or any sign of the weapons of Caicus on the lofty sterns or the lofty ships. So alliteration of the C's, synecdoche with pupibus. You gave this one to me for that. Pupibus is it's where we get the English poop deck from. It's a stern of a ship, but here it's being used for as Virgil often does. He uses this word to refer to the whole ship. And so that's synecdoche, which is a part for a whole or a whole for a part, which is a kind of metonymy. And then chiasmus. And the chiasmus here is the accusatives, capin and arma on the outside. And we have this, this ablative phrase, celsis in pupibus on the inside. So sometimes those more grammatical chiasmuses, chiasmata, can be tough to pick out. It's not just adjective noun agreement and stuff like that. Okay, so in 184, he doesn't see any ships in his sight, unfortunately. But he does see 3 deer. And so we have an asyndeton, because that idea of he sees prospicit, no ship in sight. Trace Kerbos, 3 deer though. There should be an and Virgil omits that. So it's the lack of a conjunction. And also a chiasmus with respect to, we've got nawem and nullam. So a noun followed by its adjective. And then in between those is an ablative phrase in conspectu. And then we reverse that order in the second half. Trace, so there's your adjective. Then we have the ablative word litore on the shore, and then we have our accusative keros. So that's a nice little. It's not even just a 2-part; it's a 3-part chiasmus. And these deer are wandering on the shore, and that's the translation. He spies 3 deer wandering on the shore. The best translation for a tergo, so he also sees the whole herd, the tota armenta, follows these guys, hosts, from behind, a tergo. And longum here is the modifying the augmen. The entire line of deer feeds through the valleys. And so longum modifies augmen.
So Ben, we just got a tweet from one of our fidelissima viewers, my colleague Lauren Dill, who asked if dative of place to which is the same thing as dative of direction, and they are the same thing. Some people call them dative place to which, some people call them dative of direction. So in case you've heard dative of direction, same thing, don't worry.
It kind of just depends on which commentary you're reading based off of how
Yes.
they, yeah. And we have that with the ablative of respect and the ablative of specification, and
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so another important section with lots of questions here. Number 1, looking at line 187, we have Aeneas constated he stood here, and then we have a description with que and que. So what 2 nouns does the second que in line 187 connect? Because I bet those mean both and. So we're looking at what the and connects. So then going into the next line, what's the case and use of tella? Number 3, what noun does parentes in line 189 describe? Number 4, what noun does septem? Oh, look, we've got septem again in this section. What noun does septem in line 192 modify?
Quite a coincidence.
I know, quite a coincidence. Number 5, what's the case and use of socios in 194? The best translation for in, also in 194. The tense and mood of onerarat in 195, and the case and use of dictis in 197. So I kind of feel like we probably don't have much time to give them. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, 7's a big word for the Romans, right?
Yeah.
So
we'll
probably isn't a coincidence.
Exactly. So we'll move on. If you needed to like pause and rewind and kind of not hear the answers yet, that's fine. But we're gonna press on, kids. So in the first line, he snatched up in his hand Manu, the 2 things that are linked, his bow and his quick arrows, celeres sagittas. Then in the next line, we learn that these are tela, weapons, quae, which fidus Achates gerebat, Achates was carrying. So that's an accusative direct object.
Trusty Achates.
Yes,
Yes.
fidus Achates, trusty Achates. It's kind of like our Fida Lauren, who always watches us. What noun does ferentes in line 189 describe? So we learned that he starenit. He first lays low the leaders themselves, ductores ipsos, and they are ferentes. They are carrying those their high heads with, the tree-like horns. So ferentes goes with ductores. Then in line 192, skipping down a bit after he kind of lays low the crowd, which we learn that he kind of drives inter frondea nemora into the leafy groves, among the leafy groves. He doesn't stop before nec prius obstitit quam. he has poured out, or he pours out septem ingentia corpora. So it does describe the bodies of these deer. In line 194, we get the word Sokios in 194, and we learn that he has gotten these deer because he's equet, he's equaling numerum, the number cum novibus, with his ships. So he goes to the port then, portum petit, and he partitor, he divides it, socios in omnes. So socios goes with that in omnes. It's the accusative object of in, and the best translation is among all of his allies. Then we learn about what they're going to drink, right? So then he divides up the wina, the wines, which we learned that Acestes, a king in Sicily, onerarat, had loaded.
Bonus Acestes.
Yes, bonus Acestes, good Acestes, onerarat, which stands for a longer form. It's a syncopated form of oneraverat. So that's pluperfect indicative. He had loaded them in jars for them. And he had given them as they were going away, ab beontibus. And then we learn also that now Aeneas is going to talk. He mulket, he sues their myrantia pectora, their grieving chests, dictis, with these words, by means of these words. So that's an ablative of means there.
And I think it's important to remember that the Trojans had just left Sicily. Even though we don't learn this for a couple of books from, I mean, we had seen it earlier on with like one phrase, but this idea of Acestes and Acestes helping him out, that's a book 3 thing, which is part of the flashback or the storytelling that Aeneas gives. So it's,
yeah, they had not only just left Sicily, but they were so close to their goal, right? They were so close to getting to Italy, and now all of a sudden they're on the coast of Libya.
Yep. Okay, so the last bit for today. Remember this, guys. If there's anything that you remember, it's this slide, right? So this is Aeneas's famous speech to his men, and I think that it's awesome as it stands, but then there's also 2 lines at the end after it that kind of, in typical Virgilian fashion, maybe this is Harvard School or whatever, they kind of like make us change our understanding about our hero Aeneas, and maybe about what he actually believes. But let's look through this through the Roganda first. So what figure of speech is in line 198? What 2 words does the que in line 202 link? Translate forsan to euabit in 203. Translate tendimus in latium in 205. What is ellipsed from 206? So ellipsis is when a word is understood in context and not written down. So what word is that? What word could be put there that isn't? How would parwa, that's not me, how would you, Jenny? How would parwa translate wosmet in 207 differently from me? I mean, I'm in Maine, just to let you know that. So
yes, and I live in Texas, so just keep in mind, if you know what wosmet is, this may be a clue.
Okay, and what figure of speech is in line 209? So again, I think if you'd like to pause right now, and we'll get to the answers. So we have a litotes in 198, and that is the fact that he says that we are not ignorant, we are not unknowing of evils before now, O comrades. And so that that litotes is this understatement. By saying we are not unknowing or ignorant, it essentially says we have known before now some bad times. And then he's like, "Oh, passi graviora, oh, comrades, having endured even worse things." And then this nice line, "Dabit Deus his quoque finem." A God, he doesn't say which God, he just says a God. A God will give an end to these things too. All bad things come to an end in a lot of ways. And in fact, like Neptune is the Deus that put an end to the storm, all of those horrible things. Then he draws upon their experiences, and these things happen in book 3. So they haven't happened yet according to the reader, but they have happened for Aeneas's men. He says you've approached the rage of Scylla, who is one of the monsters through the Straits of Sicily with Charybdis, and the rocks resounding deeply within. And you've also experienced the Cyclopean rock, and that recalls in book 3, there's going to be Aeneas and his men are going to see from their ship, they're going to see Polyphemus actually, and run into one of Odysseus's old men. Revo katanimos, maestum quetemorem mittete. And he says, summon back your spirits and send away that sad fear. And then this great line, I would say this is one of the top 5 lines of the Aeneid. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
For
absolutely.
sonnet haec olem meminisse uabit. Perhaps one day it will be pleasing to remember even these things. We translate the et there as kind of like an etiam, and sometimes that happens. Is in poetry and stuff, and it can be shortened for it. So don't just look at every single et and say it has to be translated as an and. Here even makes more sense. And this is just the idea that even like bad times, when you think back on them, you don't remember the horribleness of it. You might remember that bad things happen, but those feelings are gone. And so maybe it will be pleasing to think back on these times. Per varios casus, through various misfortunes, per tot discrimina rerum, through so many distinctions of things, tendimus in Latium, we head to Latium, where the fates show this quiet rest. And then we have then est in line 206, that's ellipsed, where it would be like, it is right, fas est, but the est doesn't belong. It is right there for the kingdoms of Troy to rise again. Durate, endure, persevere, and servate vosmet, and y'all, is that right?
Y'all, good job.
Y'all
You're
save
good.
yourselves or save y'all selves. I would say you, because I'm from the north. Although this is a you plural, so I've taken in recent years to calling it UPL, so UPL, which I'm trying to get going out there for a plural you in English, because we know we don't have we don't necessarily in the north at least
I was gonna say
distinguish
here
between.
we've got a plural you. Don't worry, we're set with y'all.
Yeah, I do remember though at one point you called me y'all, so I mean, I think it can be singular in the South also.
Yeah.
And then you're just messing me up. And yeah, I would YOUPL, YOU. It's like you people combined with a plural, right? So YOUPLE, YOUPL. See if we
So
can
I
get that.
do want to note that although they may not recognize UPOL, we do accept regional variations on the AP exam.
So use guys would
use
work.
guys, yeah,
Okay.
exactly, all that, all that.
Okay, all use. Okay, use. Okay. And then yeah, save yourselves, all of you guys, this Wosmet, yeah, for favorable things, for better things. That's the secundis, not necessarily translated as second, but an alternate translation. And then so he says such things with his voice, and he's curis ingentibus aeger. He's sick with huge cares. Obviously, Aeneas, as this great leader of his people, he shoulders the burdens of his people and all of their anxieties and everything, and he carries it with them. And that's what this aeger means. And then we have this great, this line is underrated, line 209. I would say it's, while it isn't quote worthy, it's one of my favorite lines of the
Mine
Aeneid.
too,
Yeah.
I love this line.
It's a chiasmus. It's like that idea of a triple chiasmus. So we start with, on the ends we have both accusatives, then in the middle section we have an ablative, and then the verbs are completely utterly in the middle. And we also have an asyndeton here too, which didn't make it on the answers. But he simulat. He feigns hope with his face, and he represses premit his deep grief in his heart, or his grief deep in his heart. And so this makes you wonder, like, what he actually believes. Like, does Aeneas believe the things that he's telling his men, or is he simply saying that to them because that's what they need to hear? And he himself, sick with these huge anxieties, will shoulder all of the concerns and all of that pain while his men eat their venison and they drink their wine that good Acestes had given them, and they're not worried about this. He will be, but they don't need to. So I love this. Like this is I go back to this section having bad weeks, having bad months or bad years and stuff. And this really kind of it makes me feel, I don't know, good. But it's true. I mean, Virgil is timeless, and this is why we read Virgil in the Aeneid, because he understands humans and how humans work. And so you can read his stuff, and it still resounds and it still speaks today to our modern minds. So
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm the same way. So because these lines are so important, and also because I think both Ben and I are so moved by them, especially in difficult times, which we're all going through right now. So we've made a close exercise for you, and you can get to it at join.nearpod.com with this code GHIOD.
was
And
that
you can,
greedy hamsters
yeah,
idolize obvious deities, right? Is that
perfect.
okay?
Perfect. Because I was going to say Nearpod doesn't come up with those great mnemonics like Pear Deck
Yeah.
does, but
Okay.
we don't need them
Yeah.
because we have you, Ben. So you guys will notice that this one is actually open and available for you to keep practicing on until June 1st, until that second administration of the exam. When you go there, you will see a close exercise for you to just practice with. You got to hear Ben translate that section.
Oh yeah. Well.
So you'll get to see, I actually typed this up, so you'll kind of get to hear and see two different translations. But of course, there's lots of different ways to render Latin into English.
Wait, there's no the translation? Is
There's
that
no
right?
the translation. So if you're
Okay.
doing it right now, we'll Ben, you can go to the next slide.
There we go.
And we're just putting these up for people who can't get into that Nearpod at join.nearpod.com at GHIOD. But for people who are doing it real fast, just because we're running low on time, we'll go to the next slide and show it to them. And I know we're short on time, but we really wanted to say today that we hope that these lines are as meaningful to you guys as they are to us in these difficult times. And like I said, we especially want to think about our seniors today. My seniors in AP, Everett, Jack, Will, Andrew, Laura Lee, Gray, Henry, Sina, Zach. I'm thinking about you guys. And Zach's not a senior, but he's the only junior in AP, so I had to mention him too.
Wow, that's impressive.
I know. I know you want to give a shout out to your kids too, Ben.
Yeah. Yeah, I have 8 kids this year. I have an Andrew also. I also have a Zach. But he's a senior. He has a twin brother Ryan, and we've got Bailey and her best friend Aria, and Phoebe, who's a great friend of everyone, Emmy, and Robert too. And I think that's 8. And like again, one of the best times that I have every week is just doing our AP class over Zoom and talking to them and touching base with them. I mean, it's a great group this year. We had potluck Fridays whenever we would have class on Fridays, and we would eat lunch in our room. And I mean, it's a great culture, and that's the sort of thing that when I look back at these times, I'm going to remember that, and remember them for their spirit and their energy, and having these long discussions about Camilla, who's a great warrior hero in the Aeneid and so forth, and just like seeing their passion and how much fun they have, and how entertaining it's been. The side conversations that don't have anything to do with Latin, and Robert knows all about that too. So yeah.
Yeah, no, this particular group of mine too is just really wonderful this year. So anyway, we're thinking of you guys. We know we need to wrap up, so we can go ahead
Oh, are
and
these the answers?
here's the answer. So
Okay.
so if you weren't able to get in, or if you just want the answers, you can come back and pause, but we can just keep going through this. We've already talked a lot about this. I don't know if you want to say anything more about this particular section.
Yeah, so one of the things that I had mentioned earlier is like the storm and the aftermath of the storm is kind of like a mini Aeneid, kind of foreshadows the whole rest of the work. And Aeneas's deer hunt, so they land in Africa, which might be similar to their landing in Italy, and then his deer hunt kind of is resembling the war there and then success afterwards. So go back through and look at the language that Virgil uses and see how it's maybe not necessarily just a hunt, but has those foreshadowings of war. And what does Aeneas's own speech to his men say to you? Like, that's important. Do you think it's uplifting? Do you think it's fake? How does it speak to you, and how will you remember it? Okay, homework, exam practice. This is a section from book 6. You might remember it. So we have some things that we want you to do with it, again, to prepare you to think about maybe how to explore these passages in a little bit more detail, especially if it's something that you maybe haven't translated because you haven't gotten this far. And then this would be practice with sight.
So you didn't need to write that down really fast because it's all in the resource folder, bit.ly/AP Latin YouTube. You can always leave us feedback or tweet us at Parwa Luongo at Latin Tutorial. And of course, if you haven't already, if you need resources, if you need mobile tools, internet connectivity, please go soon to cb.org/tech. I think next week maybe is the last time you can do that. Thank you guys for watching us. It was a little bit of a long Friday show, but we love this material and we're excited to be with you, and we will work on finishing up book 1 next week. Walete omnes.
Walete.